welcome back to another episode of the Future in Finance CeMAP study. Every time.
Good God.
Welcome back to the podcast. This week we are going to be jumping into topic 5 of your CeMAP 2 and 3 studies. And if this is the first time you've ever tuned into this, I'm Charlotte.
I'm Maria.
And we help people get CeMAP qualified. So every week we cover a new chapter of the massive, very dull LIBF textbooks, and we try and make it a little bit more relatable with the sole purpose of trying to get you CeMAP qualified as a mortgage advisors. That's what we do here.
That's the aim.
Now, before we dig into this week's episode, we need to let you know that there could be a brief interlude or a pause, which you probably won't notice because I'll try and edit it out, because currently Maria and I have no water. If you are just catching up, we're next door neighbours.
Yeah.
And we've had no water now for 30 hours.
No, longer than that. It was first thing yesterday morning, like 5 a.m. whatever hell hour you got up.
Okay, well,
and sent me a voice note being like, "There's no water."
So we're hoping that Bob the Builder is going to turn up
and fix it, because United Utilities have basically told us to go swing.
Yeah, Bob the Builder.
Can you fix it? He can.
That's
can. Why we keep him around.
Hopefully. So that's the live update that we've got.
Yeah, so this might be put on pause while we have to test water pressure. I learned some things about water pressure. Didn't ever know I'd need.
I just need a wash, to be honest.
I really could do with a shower, and I've got no water coming through my shower, so...
And with that in mind, this brings us to the stinky episode that is going to be covering CeMAP 2 and 3 textbook topic 5, which is all to do, I think, with land registration stuff, but I'm going to have to check my notes. So while I check my notes, Maria, would you kindly
cue intro music?
Okay, so there's quite a bit to cover with topic 5, actually. I was just flicking through my notes, and it's quite a hefty topic as far as your exam's going to go. Remember, with CeMAP 2 and 3, your exam is split into 4 different units. So you effectively sit 4 different exams in your 2-hour time period.
Ew.
You've got Unit 3 through to Unit 6. The reason that there isn't a Unit 1 and 2 is because Unit 1 and 2 is your CeMAP 1 exam.
Oh, okay, that makes sense.
Now, you don't have to sit the exams in order, so you could technically sit CeMAP 2 first, then 3, then 1. It doesn't matter. But your CeMAP 2 and 3 covers the same material, this textbook, so this topic is relevant for both of them. And you are focusing with this chapter, this is focused on Unit 3. So it's the first 25 questions for your exam, basically.
Oh, cool. Okay.
So land registration. Maria, what do you know about land registration?
It is a register for land.
Cool, that's the baseline. Excellent. So, land registration. I mean, you're not wrong.
Uh-huh.
It is a register for land.
Right.
Now, we used to live in a world many years ago where if you wanted to own a property, there was, I guess you would just, I don't know, would you just go in and take it if you were stronger than the person that didn't own the property, before laws and stuff?
Yeah, caveman, whack 'em on the head, take the cave.
Exactly. We're no longer in the caveman era, so there has to be a legal way that people can prove that they own property. And that's where land registration comes in.
Okay, that makes far more sense than whacking someone over the head with a club.
In 1990, they made it compulsory for every piece of land to be registered, either when it's mortgaged, when there's a transfer of ownership, and there's another one that I can't remember. But ultimately, if you sell a house and it's not registered, you have to put it on land registry.
Okay.
The reason that it's important is because it proves that you own that land.
So nobody else can be like, I actually own this land.
Exactly. So a really recent example that I just read about in the media was a guy bought a bit of land in, I want to say Surrey.
Was this the guy that came back and found someone had built a mansion on his land?
This is the exact one.
That is wild.
Yep. So what had happened, he'd bought a bit of land in Surrey as an investment years ago. He'd then moved abroad but always owned his land. And then somebody that you went to school with or college with or whatever emailed him and was like, "Hey pal, how you doing? Didn't know you decided to build on your little plot. Like, it's looking good. What's the plan? Is it still yours or have you sold it?" He flies back from wherever it is that he's living and realises that it wasn't a mansion, it was, I think it was like rural offices.
What?
And he investigates it, and basically somebody had faked the
land
papers to
registry.
say that they owned it. Then they'd sold it to a massive company, like we're talking Coca-Cola massive. They'd bought it for a fucking chunk, and then they built on it. He then had to take that company to court, evidence that he was the owner, which of course he could because he had the documents.
Oh, thank God he had the documents. I was very invested in this.
And then basically the courts turned around and said the property is now yours, and the company have to take down their property and make the land good again in the condition that it was had they never owned it. So it can still happen. It does still happen.
That's crazy. You'd think with all the checks, all the fraud protections, all the technology, all it takes is some kid with a fucking printer and a laptop, and he's like, here you go, forge your documents for a multi-million-pound property in Surrey.
So it does still happen. This is why land registration is important, because eventually every single piece of land or every single house in the UK will be registered with land registry, and we'll never have this problem because it'll all be electronic until they come in and shut down our electronic systems.
Until whatever hacking
software
ruins everything and they turn the grid off.
And then it'll be back to like caveman times. Exactly.
Welcome to the Apocalypse Now podcast.
So that's why land registration exists. There is a particular rule that says if you buy a property, you have to register that bit of land if it's never been registered before, or you have to attach your legal ownership of it within 2 months.
Okay.
It's very likely that'll come up in your exam. Spoiler, so make sure you write that one down.
2 months if your piece of property has never been registered.
Yeah, if you don't, what do you think happens?
Fines.
The ownership goes back to the original owner, even if you've paid for it.
No!
I mean, realistically what would happen is the original owner would then have to put that property into trust. But until you were ready to claim it, but actually it goes back to the original owner. It just reverts, and it's like it never happened. Sorry if you can hear the tractor going past in the background. We might have to give it a second to get over the speed bump. But ultimately, that's what happens with unregistered land. Whose job do you think it is to check if land is registered?
Yours or your solicitor's?
Your solicitors, exactly. So this is why we have a solicitor. Legally, you don't have to have a solicitor to buy a house. There's no rule that says that you do.
But they're aware of all the checks and legal blah blah.
You can't get a mortgage as well. A mortgage company will not let you buy a property if you don't use a solicitor.
What?
And that's because it's their investment. Until you've paid off that debt, it's their investment.
Oh, that's true. Okay,
so they can't recoup their money if the solicitor hasn't done a good job. So a solicitor that deals specifically in property is called a conveyancer.
Yeah.
I did not know this until recently when I was reading the textbook, and I'm already CeMAP qualified, so that was a shock even to me. So
conveyancer, just a property solicitor.
Yeah, so you might see the word solicitor, you might see the word conveyancer. Doesn't really matter which one you use, they both mean the same thing. It's their job to check all the stuff about the property.
Okay.
So they're going to check if it's registered. They're also going to check that the person that's selling it is the legal owner on land registry.
So what I'm hearing is that whoever was the solicitor acting on behalf of the people that purchased that, guys, they're going to be in big
real fucked up.
Real trouble.
Now, usually what happens, if it is that it's an unregistered piece of land and there's no documents, they have to look back over the last 15 years worth of property history. And as long as somebody can be like, look, I've been living here 15 years, I've paid all the bills, blah, 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 that's probably good enough. But usually solicitors will take out a title indemnity guarantee, which basically is an insurance policy that you pay for that says if it is that you turn out not to be the legal owner, the insurance will cover you. Most solicitors will actually take that out as a standard feature, and lenders will ask for it as well, because that's then going to protect their investment.
Everybody wants their investment protected, which is fair enough.
And if you think about how many people take out that type of insurance policy and how many people end up having to claim on it, it's not that many. So
that's a really niche product.
Yeah, it's called a title indemnity guarantee.
Will that come up in your exam?
Potentially, yeah.
Okay, so you need to know that, kids.
Make that one, write that one down. What else was there? There was something else, Maria.
You're the captain. I'm just paddling madly here.
That's it. So, no, it's gone. Hang on, let me check my notes. Easements.
Ooh.
That's what we're going to talk about next.
Okay.
A huge part of CeMAP 2 and CeMAP 3, this will not come up in your CeMAP 1 exam, is the difference between easements and covenants, and what easements and covenants are. And everybody hates them. It's like one of the most infuriating things that my students are like, Charlotte, I just do not understand it.
Okay.
So I'm gonna dumb it right down.
Excellent, because I've got no idea what these are.
Cool. An easement is a rule where one property has a right over another property.
Oh, I feel like I remember this. Did we have this discussion? Was it related to like... Oh, no, that was wrong. I'm going to confuse everyone and myself.
Yeah, don't confuse anyone.
Okay. So, for example, shared driveways?
Shared driveways is kind of an easement, yeah.
Or if I need to drive through your property to get to my property.
Bingo.
So...
Hit the nail on the head. Well done.
Technically, if I owned all of the back of my property, which I don't because we have a shared driveway.
Yeah.
You would have to be given the right of access over my driveway to park in your parking space.
Exactly. So I would be in that instance. So the first point is to remember that an easement always relates to two properties. If you get an example in your exam and it sounds like an easement, but it's only what to do with one property, it's not an easement, it's a covenant, which we'll come on to.
So it's always to do with two separate properties having a thing.
And there's always going to be one person that benefits from it and one person that is burdened with it.
Oh my God, you know what a perfect example of this is? Anyone that's watched Yellowstone will know exactly what I'm about to say.
Okay, go.
They have a cattle ranch and they have to drive over a neighbouring rancher's property.
To get
shared,
to theirs.
it's his road.
Yeah.
They have to drive over it to get their cattle to graze. He puts a cattle grid in so they can't move the cattle down the road to their property, and he's done it because someone's paid him off and it's like a whole thing, but basically someone ends up tying him up and putting him under his own cattle grid to make the point that he can't fucking do that.
Oh wow, that's...
I mean, I'm not recommending you do that, but this is how you're going to remember easements.
Do you know what? That's it. That is a perfect example as well, because there's something in the textbook that talks about this idea of easement, an easement of necessity, or it's also called encirclement, and it's the same thing, and it basically says if you have to drive over somebody else's land to get to your own, that's an easement by necessity or encirclement, and actually that does often come up in my students' exams.
So I would imagine, yeah, especially when it comes to like farmland.
Yeah.
Like...
It's not even that, not even just farmland, although very often it is where farmers will sell a section of their fields to let people develop on it. Then has to be an easement by necessity or encirclement for people to pass on to it to get to their houses.
Yeah.
With easements, you have the dominant tenement who benefits from it and the servient tenement who is effectively burdened by it. I have to think of 50 Shades of Grey every single time.
Literally, as you were saying it, I was like, I'm going to make a BDSM joke here.
Yep, so that's another thing to remember about easements. And actually, as long as you remember that it's always between two properties, you're pretty much on the ball with that one. The last one is a right to light, which is another example of an easement. So let's say... If I was the dominant tenement and I had an easement attached to your property that said you couldn't build anything that blocked my light.
Oh.
That's my right to light, but technically that burdens your property because it means you can't stick a wall up above 7 foot or whatever because then you're blocking my right to light.
Oh, okay. That makes sense. So that's why people go rogue and chop their neighbours' hedges down and shit.
Exactly that.
Interesting.
These kind of things, the reason that they're important and the reason that they're in this topic is because they affect a property value.
100%. If you know that you have an easement on your property saying you're not going to be able to build anything in this area because it's going to affect your neighbour's light, that's going to impact any expansion plans that you might have for that property.
And more importantly, it's going to affect the lender's decision as to whether or not they think that property is still worth the asking price.
Also, if your access to your property hinges on going down a private road over someone else's property.
Exactly.
Where does that leave you?
So that's why easements are important. Usually now they're listed on Rightmove. So they should put them on Rightmove and then people know, and then the asking price is a reflection of the easement.
That. Okay.
But very often people have no idea there's an easement attached to the property. It isn't until your solicitor does the checks and they go, do you know about this easement? And then that has to go back to the lender and they have to decide whether or not they want to lend on it or whether they're going to lower their offer or whatever. So it does happen all the time. It's something that everybody will come across at some point in their careers. That's an easement. We also have rights of way or rights of access, and I know already that you have the best story because the textbook uses the example of public footpaths.
Love a good public footpath.
So again, if you've got a public footpath that runs directly under your kitchen window, you're probably going to be a bit pissed about it.
Yeah.
Which I believe is exactly what...
Pretty much what happened to Gramps and Granny. So my grandparents bought a little cottage, buttfuck nowhere, Cheshire, and decided, because my grandmother was my grandmother, they were going to expand it. And by expand it, they basically knocked all but 2 walls of this cottage down and then tripled the size of the fucking thing. In amongst the tripling the size of it, this was a few years ago now. So legality-wise, I was a toddler. So I have no idea how they got away with this. But basically, there was an ordnance survey footpath straight over the middle of the property, which would have made it straight through the kitchen, you know, the original big galley kitchen. It would have gone straight through, literally to the left of the cooker, straight through the kitchen sink. That's where it ran. So my grandfather, being my grandfather, was like, well, we can't have that. Maya, my grandmother, will not stand for it. And she basically was like, he was like, I can move it to the end of the house. And my grandmother, being my grandmother, was like, not good enough. Get rid of it entirely, because that's what she thought she could do. And my grandfather was like, we can't do that. And my grandmother was like, I don't care, fix it. My grandmother, Emily Gilmore. That was my grandmother. My grandfather, kind of a Richard. So my grandfather reinstated the footpath at the end of the house, and then once a month would move it about a foot. So by the time, I think it took him probably thick end of a year to get it to the edge, to the boundary line of the property, which he then built a wall, paved it, weed killed it, hand built a stile for each end, and he was big into like working with wood, so he engraved public footpath with a little arrow, because obviously you can only get the tags from Ordnance Survey. And they actually, the following year, had a guy from Ordnance Survey come out and be like, we've had the report that the footpath has been moved and it's illegal. You are not allowed to move it. And my grandfather was like, I don't know what you're talking about. He was like, I've maintained it. And then gave the guy the tour of his 20-footer footpath. And the guy declared it was the best kept, nicest 20-footer footpath in all of Cheshire that he'd ever seen. So my grandfather was very happy. My grandmother was very happy. And Ordnance Survey were like, we'll just change it on the map.
I can't believe actually, if Ordnance Survey changed it on the map, I was going to say, I can't believe the house sold, because usually that would stop a house sale going through.
What do you mean?
If the public footpath had been interrupted and it hadn't been okayed with Ordnance Survey,
I remember when we sold it, it did come. Their solicitor came back with like fucking 14 pages of queries, which our solicitor robustly responded to with, if you had read the notes, you would have the answers to at least 12 of these pages. Our solicitor was not fucking around. But it was, I think it did come up, but it does line up with the map. And I mean...
Oh, okay, fair enough.
I at that point, I think I was drinking too much to care what was going on.
Yeah, I can respect that. So, we've done easements between 2 properties. We've done right of way. Best example is public footpath.
Yeah.
The last one is covenants.
Ooh.
It's kind of the same as an easement, but it's just attached to one property.
Okay.
The example we are going to use, and I always use this example, is new build housing estates. Mm-hmm. You know the ones, the Barrett's homes, they all look the same. 5 bedrooms, double driveway.
Cookie cutter.
Yeah, Labrador in the front garden. I think it comes with the house. White picket fence, 2.4 kids.
Evoke on the drive.
Oh, that one.
Yeah.
They want to maintain them looking like whatever neighbourhood it is that they want to look like. Basically, high-class homes. So what they do is when Barrett's Homes or whichever developer it is that builds them, they attach covenants to the property that say things like, you must not repaint the door colour.
No fucking way!
You must not put solar panels on your house.
They can do that?
You must not have chickens on the property.
What?
So, and most new build housing estates now, they all have covenants attached. You can't keep a caravan on the drive. Devalue your home. Apparently, make sure you get a pico.
Oh,
you can say that.
Oh, that explains why my neighbours are well pissed about the ambulance.
Yeah, exactly. So all of these are called covenants.
Right.
And basically you will either have a positive covenant, which is you must do something,
So must mow your lawn, must maintain your pavement section.
Exactly. Or a negative covenant, which is you must not keep chickens, you must not put solar panels on your roof, whatever it is.
I can't believe that. So you even if you purchase that home outright,
even if you purchase it
they
outright,
still exist.
Attached.
So they literally, by law, legally, even though you own that house, you can never have chickens. You can never park your caravan. This is some fucking horseshit.
So one of my students had, was it chickens or was it solar panels? I can't remember.
Two very different things.
They decided to get either chickens or solar panels, and they got a letter from the housing association, from Barrett's Homes or whoever it was, saying this is against the covenant on the property. And ultimately they can take them to court, and they're allowed to do that. And they were like, take us to court, it's chickens, it's going to cost you way more than it costs us to have the chickens, kind of a thing. And they didn't bother in the end, and that's because it's not beneficial for them to do it. I don't know if that was also a shared ownership property, which is a slightly different dynamic.
Okay.
But the key takeaway with covenants is you have positive covenants and you have restrictive covenants.
Yeah.
Restrictive covenants, that you must not do something, is attached to the property. So when the property sells, it moves along with the property.
Yeah.
Positive covenants are attached to the property owner. So technically, if you had a new build property and you sold it and there was a positive covenant on there that said you must mow your lawn every 2 weeks, if you didn't attach that into the sale of the property as a condition for the new owner, you would have to go back and mow the lawn of your old house every 2 weeks legally.
No way! Do you know what? That's worth, guys, keep an eye out for that one, because that would be brilliant.
Yes, that's how you get a free lawn.
Yeah, because it is, I mean, no offence to gardeners out there, but it's a rip-off of 20 quid to mow a lawn.
Yeah, all 7 foot of my lawn.
Yeah.
So that's the difference between a positive and a restrictive covenant. And it's just really important as we finish off with this to remember that all of these things will affect the value of a property. Because what you are willing to pay might be less if you realise you can't have chickens.
Yeah, or it might be more if you know that none of your neighbours are going to have chickens.
Yeah, exactly. But it's always the lender's decision, and the lender will do one of a few things. First of all, they'll come back and just say, no, too risky, we're not willing to lend.
Yeah.
But they do still kind of want the custom. So more often than not, they'll come back with a revised offer to say, based on the information we've got, we actually don't think the property's worth that anymore. We think it's worth this. And at that point, as a buyer, you go to the seller and you lower your offer. Yeah. That's usually what happens. Or they can just decide to go ahead regardless because they don't think actually it impacts anything. But ultimately, the solicitor has to check all these things. And if they don't do their due diligence, they've done a pretty shit job. Which is why most lenders will have recommended solicitors that you have to use. Because
they trust them, they know they've done a good job, blah, blah, blah.
Exactly. It's called a panel of solicitors. So if you go with a particular lender, the lender will go, here's our panel of solicitors, just pick one off that list and you have to use them.
That's fair.
And that's how it works.
I mean, a bit annoying, but at least you know that they're going to do a halfway decent job.
And that's all that we've got time for this week. So that is another topic down. I've not really done I usually do the introduction of this is what I do and this is where you can find it, and we're going to leave that
straight in.
Yeah, so if you've already listened to this a million times and you've done all the episodes, you can abandon ship at this point. But if anybody does want any more help with their CeMAP studies, just remember you can go to futureinfinance.co.uk. There is over 12 hours worth of completely free study material. There's an e-learning platform which you can get access to forever until you're qualified, and a lot of my students use that, or you can take the masterclass route. Woo! Everybody calls it a fast track course, or every other provider that doesn't offer a money back guarantee calls it a fast track course. I call it a masterclass, and that's because you have the money back guarantee, you have unlimited support from me, and you just get a little bit more than the other stuff that's on the market. So if you do want any more information on that, remember to go to futureinfinance.co.uk. If you have found this episode useful, please make sure that you subscribe or press the little bell button if this is on Spotify, because it makes all the difference to how much free content we can keep putting out there. Because this will remain free, and again, I still think we're the only people doing this kind of thing. Yeah. So it really does make a world of difference. Give us a review if you want to, but only if it's going to be 5 stars. If it's not going to be 5 stars, then bugger right off.
We had our first low review this morning, didn't we?
Yeah, but it wasn't officially posted online.
We got a voice note from someone telling us that she'd put it on in the car taking a toddler to nursery, and a toddler had kicked off. And been like, no, mummy!
I can't do it anymore. So I'll take that on the chin. I'll take it as feedback.
Or if you want to torture your kids, put us on in the car on the school run.
Yeah, just remember that the language in these is not clean.
Not child safe.
They are marked as explicit on Spotify, so you listen at your own risk. But thank you so much for being here. Thanks for listening. We try and do these episodes almost every week, although more often than not it's every 2 weeks because we forget. But we will post them as often as we can, and we will catch you for the next episode.